Hi, Mike. No kidding. Holy moly. You are still muted.
Oh, sorry.
I don't think you were saying much, but if you were, I missed it.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I was just checking the price on Amger, proof of facts.
Crazy.
I don't know if this is the consumer price or what does the library pay? I'm guessing this is what I pay, not what the library pays.
Right. And, so we've had this set for years. So I don't know any library who would be buying it new at this point. So I can't remember what we paid for the annual upkeep, but it's not down. And in our last, so we enter 3-year contracts with Thomson Reuters, and in our last one, we really went back and forth about whether to keep updating by pocket parts these sets because they're so readily available on our Westlaw contract. But some folks still like to go and look at those indexes and access the material that way. Next year, when it comes up again, we'll see.
Yeah.
See what we do.
I think the indexes are available. Actually, it's a separate database, aren't they?
I think so. They used to be.
Here it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And so often when you do just kind of a general search in that sort of suggested additional reading, that's where like Amger and ALR, all those other annotations start popping up. I think that's the way a lot of people access those titles these days. So did you have a chance to look at that little blog post I forwarded you yesterday?
I did.
It just made me laugh, but I think the author had a point though. She's like, we have to stop personifying this.
I've heard a lot of that.
Have you? Oh, I hadn't heard much of that before. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot. I can't remember. I haven't been tracking who's been saying what about it. So It was good to have the reference there, actually. But yeah, I've heard a lot of people saying when we talk about this, we need to remember that what it's doing is assembling words. It's not coming up with ideas.
Right. It doesn't have a
technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not thinking. It's and I can't remember who it was that just hearing something recently, but it was like on my run. It was like it might have been Bob Ambrosi's blog or podcast or something. But he says it's hard to describe what's happening without personifying it, right? There's no general terminology for describing what we're getting or what we're processing or what we're doing with it. Without
exactly
anthropomorphizing the machine there.
And I don't just think it's a human tendency. We do that with animals too. We insert things into our framework. And so.
Yeah. I think Mike Robach is going to join us this morning.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
So I'll pause. Did any chance you got a chance to look at this article from the
see that
Bench and Bar? I was going to try. I should have sent it along. I wanted to cover it last week, but I forgot to mention it in our pre-show, and I forgot to mention it again today. But this article by Mike Boulette and colleagues. I don't know these folks. remember Mike from Bar Association, but
Mhm.
these were it's about the lack of privacy for
Yeah,
divorce records that they're all available, and it's embarrassing. And
yeah,
there's an argument here for making those better protected. And I'd be interested to have a discussion about that. But if we
yeah,
can, I might just reference the article if no
yeah.
one's had a chance to look at it.
And it isn't just divorce cases too that cause people
hmm,
pain. You know, in the old days, it used to be that for all intents and purposes, you could access appellate decisions like in criminal law. And now, you know, you can pull up those trial court records for anything that's, you know, anyone who's been cited. And I don't know. I'm all about open access and stuff, but we see people come in who are literally just digging dirt up on their neighbors. They have no,
Oh, really?
oh
That's
yeah,
excellent. Yeah, let's have that conversation. I think that's
yeah.
that is interesting.
Someone's,
I
I mean, not
also,
all the time, but once people discover it, you know, they do want to know what those
yeah.
sisters been up to
Yeah.
or whatever.
I mean, there's legitimate research,
Oh,
but
for sure.
I interesting. I really want to hear what you have to say about.
Well, you know me, Mike. I have opinions.
Well, you have the experience with the people walking into the library too. So.
Right. Right.
And I can't remember. Did we chat about the?
We did. We talked about that last week.
Yeah, I
That,
know.
that
We looked at Rule 5.4,
right.
and we looked at this. I remember we looked at, but I couldn't remember whether or not we discussed the article that got buried, the op-ed that got buried by the Bar Association.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where we started, and then we sort of spun out on that. What
Right.
has anything else been happening in the subsequent week?
There was another interview with the authors, which was
Mhm.
not entirely enlightening, but just thinking about this over the last week, and not sure we have an excuse to revisit it necessarily, but
And did the meeting happen in Denver?
yes. Oh, that's
Yeah,
right. That's right.
because this was just prior to that
That's
meeting.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was, yeah, right during the meeting. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. I'm going to actually get rid of that one because,
Otherwise, we'll like say, what was that again?
yeah, I know. What do we talk about? We'll give Michael just a minute to log in here. I don't think I gave him the time when I sent he might not know even.
Oh, yeah,
You know what? In fact, let
yeah.
me check my email, make sure. Nope. But we will let him in the door when he arrives. Folks are welcome to join us at any time.
Did you make it into the law library this week, Mike?
No, I didn't. I did.
Oh,
I
okay.
ended up on a call. I was gonna. It was. I had drinks with Michael on Tuesday.
Oh, gotcha. Yep.
And or Tuesday or Wednesday. It was Wednesday. I ended up
Okay.
on a call until 2:00, and so I didn't leave the
Oh,
office until late. And
yeah. Well,
so
I
I
was
just ended
hoping
up
I
at
hadn't missed you.
yeah. We went to Eli's for a martini. It was great.
Where did you go? Oh, Eli's. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Eli's on
yeah.
Hennepin.
Yeah,
Very
that's
nice
fun.
place. I've been going
Yeah.
there since I moved to Minneapolis almost 30 years now.
Yeah.
I've been on Eli's.
It's a nice when a place can stay, you know, make it.
Yeah, they've been around a long time. All right, let's officially launch here. This
Sounds
is
good.
Gray Paper Pod. Where each week we answer the question, what was the most interesting legal research question of the week? I'm Mike with Gray Paper Legal.
And I'm Karen Westwood, Director of the Hennepin County Law Library.
Welcome back, Karen. We may be joined by Michael Robach from the University of St. Thomas today. As we were just talking about, I had drinks with Michael and we chatted about, we just got caught up on all things in legal tech. It was kind of a fun time to sit down with him. But let's get rolling here. Let's chat a little bit about what was the most interesting legal research question of your week, Karen.
Well, thanks, Mike. I'm not sure if it was the most interesting, but it occurred to me it's a classic legal research question. And I was just wondering if the way we approach this, if it's time that we change or the old method still works. So the question was, I need to try my first dog bite case, file my first dog bite case. Like, what should I know? Are there any CLEs on it or any like how-tos? So I was telling Mike, the first thing I often do is look at Minnesota CLEs and see if there's a chapter or anything good on that. And kind of to my surprise, there wasn't. That just sounds like it would be a CLE, trying your first dog bite case.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was surprised that I learned that there wasn't one. I didn't look at the materials on their website, but I was surprised that they didn't have it, because that's often the kind of thing that they do.
Right. So I didn't see one there, and certainly nothing current. So, I did a little poking around, and then I thought, those classic poems that we used to go to in print that I kind of conflate in my mind would be these large sets: Amjur Proof of Facts, Amjur Trials, what is now called Causes of Action, and is a Thomson Reuters publication, but used to be called Shepard's Causes of Action. And then that old classic ALRs. And I think of American Law Reports as that kind of set that takes a look at a specific area of law and gives you the lay of the land throughout the country. But those other three sets, Trials, Proof of Facts, and Causes of Action, are super practical in terms of giving you sample pleadings, laying out the elements, deciding in this circumstance, what are your possible causes of action? And then sometimes they'll even have sample documents you might use throughout the course of a trial. And I think it's, can't remember which one, always starts out with, like, how do you do your initial interview with a client? What are the questions you have to remember to ask right up front? And they have checklists. And indeed, I found some good articles from those sets, and I sent them off. But it caused me to wonder, like, what are the other ways that we're trying to address these kinds of questions? When you're going to do X for the first time, what are all the things you as an attorney need to keep in mind? And so I thought of, on Westlaw, there's, I think they call it, is it practical law?
It's called practical law, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think there's a comparable product on Bloomberg, or there was, and probably on Lexis. We don't get any of these products here in the law library. So I've kind of lost track. They really pushed those about 10 years ago, coming out, experts in the field. A lot of business and transactional kinds of things were included in those early early topic areas when they were first coming out with it. So I was just kind of idly wondering, is that an attempt to supplant these long treatments in proof of facts and trials and causes of action, or not? So Mike, what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, it's a really, there's so many things I love about this question, actually. I mean, you think about what a lawyer does and how we're trained and all that kind of good stuff. And then somebody comes in, I need to try my first dog bite case. It seems very pedestrian, very 101, very basic, but that's the kind of thing that we're not trained to do that kind of thing, right? That's not part of our training. That's not what we do.
Right.
So
how
these
do I file?
resources are,
can I ask for punitive damages at the time I file? All these just like things you need to know. Yeah.
I love the question. I love that that's what came out across your desk this week. And yeah, the American jurisprudence. These resources are amazing. You can see that I brought this one up just to show the price at $42K for
Right. So you should be a member
right.
of the Hennepin County Law Library.
Yeah, that's right.
You'll have access to all this stuff.
All of that stuff. And I pulled up the sample pages here, and yeah, and I loved these when when I was doing research at Thomson Reuters, because folks would ask, I need sample discovery on this kind of action, and Amjur causes of action had it as well, but had the sample interrogatories,
Right.
For and checklists. So it really covered all of the bases for a particular cause of action. You call them articles. I always thought them as little pamphlets, or
Yeah.
I mean, they are articles. They're sections of the treatise, but there's a reason this is $42,000. It's gigantic. How much shelf space is this? There used to be a indicator here on how much shelf space. I wonder if that's still available.
Well, it takes up many linear feet, and there's Amjur POF and POF 2D. They ran out of space and started a second series. And I think trials and causes of action too are also on either second or third series. I don't think causes of action takes up quite as much shelf space, but then the American Law Reports, they are into, I think, the 6th series, plus the federal series. So that takes up a lot of real estate.
Those are great research. ALR I usually think of as not trial prep, but research survey, great depth in a very narrow topic.
Right.
Another reason why you've got these, and I think all of those are still super, super valuable. I don't know. I mean, it is. We've talked regularly about whether or not the AI tools are going to replace secondary sources, but maybe that's on the horizon. I don't know, but I do not anytime soon want to jettison these resources. I think these are super, super valuable. I like the idea that there's a human being whose job it is to take a look at that very narrow topic and be able to talk about it. I think it's super valuable for the person who needs to do a dog bite thing, right? It's you never know kind of where you're going to end up as a practitioner, and that somebody's got their eye on this, I think, is extremely valuable.
Right, and I think it really illustrates that you can be quite excellent at whatever area of law you're practicing in, and then a case comes up that's a little bit different, and you just want to know, has anyone done this before, and what does it look like? When we used to give tours of the library in person, like to law clerks and things, we'd always walk over to these sets and just randomly pull a book off the shelf and open it up and say, so if you have a backyard swimming pool and the neighbor climbed over the fence and got into it, like, here's an article that talks about what are the causes of action, what are your defenses, and so forth. And it was great. I almost without fail, you'd pull something out that was, like you said, narrow, but something that might come up. And wouldn't it be great if there was a source? And there is.
There is. And it's comprehensive, right? If you're not familiar with the area, and one of the challenges with research is, am I done? Have I covered all of my bases? Surely, one of the frustrations you often hear from attorneys doing research is, well, I'm sure this happens every day, but so why isn't there more material? And was, well, yeah, but not everything is litigated, to the appellate level, and so this is a comprehensive resource. You can see this is the pool of resources, pool of materials you should be looking at in order to make sure that you've covered all of your bases. That's super valuable. That dog bite, I think, is a good example. If we do just a regular search for dog bite, it's so pedestrian, happens every day. We're going to come up with 10,000. No,
Yeah,
5,000 cases going all the way back to the beginning of time, right? It's not
right,
that many, right? And
right,
of course it's not, right? Because appellate case law is, you're not going to litigate your dog bite case to, the appellate court.
right.
But look at here, the practical law resources, there are only 3 available.
So what do they look like? Or do you have practical law?
I don't
Mike?
have access to
Oh,
practice
yeah.
law. I have not done that yet. We can take a look at the page
The
of those.
titles,
You've
yeah.
got
So it's
checklists, and
OSHA, at-will
these
employment.
are not on point though for the kind of thing that we
Right.
want to do. What's cool about these is that they are I sort of put these into the category. I've always called them know-how tools. Practical law.
Yep.
Lexis, it was Practice Advisor. They changed the name a couple of
Right.
times,
Yep.
and I can't
Yep.
remember. Bloomberg, I don't even know what they
Yeah,
called.
I thought
their
Bloomberg
resource.
had one, but that was a lot more like transactional kinds of concepts, business types of things. Yeah.
These are very cool resources, and I think that residential lease agreements, key lease considerations in Minnesota.
Yeah.
That's something that I want as a resource. It's not maintained,
Yep.
so it's a little dated here, but they do label these as either maintained or not maintained, which is,
That's
so the
super
idea with
helpful.
these resources is they've got all of these experts who are updating these materials regularly. Same thing as ALR, same thing as the causes of action. But if you're pulling, the M&A attorney who's got 30 years experience doing that, you're not going to get the dog bite overview,
Right. Right.
And so I love practical law. I love those kinds of know-how resources. I think it's a whole new category of stuff. I don't know, how that survives in the world of AI, but they're very good resources, but it does not, I don't believe, replace either of those super valuable and expensive resources.
Right.
Though, as you say, we can get them from that's an email to Karen from me quite often, actually, is I'll send over a note to the library saying,
Yeah.
hey,
Hey, I saw this article. Yeah. ALR. I wonder if you have any contacts at Thomson Reuters. That I think you had Amter proof of facts pulled up, $42,000 to buy it new. I'm wondering if anyone buys it new anymore.
I know. I don't. Yeah.
I mean, we keep it up. We've had it since time immemorial, and so we keep these sets up. And if we stopped, we might. I don't know. Maybe we would pick it up again later. But I just can't picture buying it new. I suppose if you had a catastrophe, a flood or something. I wonder how many of these they sell a year, right? Less than 5. But what do I know? I'm not in the publishing business. I'm curious.
I wonder if we could get somebody to answer that question for us. I doubt it. Well, and libraries are picking this up. I mean, so it's they may need a fresh set, I suppose.
I suppose I can only picture that if it was damaged. These books are pretty durable technology.
Yeah, I know. Well, and these are print on demand, so it's not like, I'm not sure I'm using the terminology correctly there, but the facility in Eagan there is not generating,
right,
hundreds of these and hoping that they can sell them. That's not
having them sitting in the warehouse.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So but it's a resource I love. I'm in them regularly. Even if it's just a little chapter, it's great that they're on Westlaw, so I can say, here's the 4 pages I need. I don't need $42,000 worth of your proof of facts. I can identify it. I can get it from the library. It's just real world practical resource for people who are actually practicing the law, which I love.
Yeah.
Practical Law, Practice Advisor, all of those tools have the same kind of thing, but I think it's more targeted toward the commercial practitioner, I think.
Yeah. And early on, especially the topical coverage seemed very spotty, which I suppose was true of all of these large
Yeah,
sets. You have to
yeah.
start somewhere and then you build. So
Yeah, I should bring that up. So they've got the as you can see here, the personal
right,
injury, dog bite,
right,
dangerous animal statutes
right.
and
So
all
some
that.
of these really like the kinds of things we get a lot of in the public law library from people trying to figure things out on their own, we're not seeing here, which is not surprising. But like we don't see family law, we're not seeing anything about small claims. There's real estate, so I guess maybe there's landlord tenant. But probate, those are the things that we see
Yeah.
a lot of, and maybe that would be included in trusts and estates, but
During COVID, there was a lot of force majeure links down here.
sure, yeah,
So I mean, it's up to date all typically too, and
yeah, that's great.
addressing contemporary concerns. I have not used. I like these tools. I've used them occasionally, but yeah, I have not bitten the bullet and purchased this additional. Now with the new Westlaw, I've got another tool I want to buy, and then with Case Text or Co-Counsel coming on board, I'm
Right.
just gonna hold my breath, right? Because my next upgrade is at Thompson is going to be pricey, I think.
All right. There's some big decisions there to
Yeah.
make. Yeah.
So
Yep. So that was
Very
my classic.
cool.
What was your interesting question of the week, Mike?
I had a lot of research this week. I had very challenging regulatory, statutory research this week, which sent me around in circles. And I can't talk about much of those. And just to say, it was one of those situations where I ended up going round and round because the reading of the statute didn't make any sense, and it didn't comport with what the regulation said that the statute meant. Then so I had to go down this sidetrack of looking into what happens when the statute and the regulation don't agree. What's the rule about and then it gets slightly political because you've got the administrative state being questioned about.
Right.
So it took I went down a big rabbit hole this week with some of that stuff, but super fun, but very, very challenging research project this week on that front. I meant to cover this last week. This article by Michael Boulette and his colleagues at the Minnesota State Bar Association and the Bench and Bar Magazine. We've talked about Minnesota court records online here a number of times, and generally celebrated, I guess, the availability of these tools, and also a little bit of frustration that some of the stuff is hard to find. You can't do full text searching and things like that. But this article from in Bench and Bar was talking about how it's exposing too much, that these divorce cases and all the dirty details of divorce cases are not just freely available online. And I thought, well, this is really a challenging piece. I totally sympathized with the sentiment of this piece. Who wants their private information out in the world in favor of open access? I mean, there's still some misfiring there between what we really need from open records and what's actually being delivered on many fronts. So I thought this was a super interesting article. And right before we started here, you were saying that actually a lot of people come into the library looking for dirt on their neighbors, which I probably underplayed that as a thing.
Right. And I wouldn't say a lot of people do, but I think people do. And it isn't just so back in the day, this was all public information, right? But you had to go to a courthouse
Yeah.
and request a file and then look through a paper file and then, I don't know, copy things if you wanted or whatever and return it. And now with it more freely available, that's so convenient for attorneys. It's super helpful for like civil legal aid and attorneys doing pro bono work. I can think of so many reasons why this is just really good, making things more convenient, not having the expense of sending runners to the courthouse. But we do get people in who have discovered this, and yeah, they're just looking up stuff. And some people who don't show a lot of discretion will tell me why. She used to rent from me and she stole my van. And I know she hooked up with this bad guy. And
Yeah.
I think, she's in on a drug charge now. And I'm like, wow, dude, I don't want to hear all this. But it does. And I think, we also have people who are upset during probate proceedings. This is often a highly charged emotional time for people. And they'll say, yeah, my sister is the personal representative, but like, what else is going on with her? And then they want to start digging around to find out, like, what does she need money for? Is she really being upfront in the probate proceeding? And so then they'll try to find other information about her. It's really tempting for people, Mike. I think there's this human curiosity, right? And once you realize you can find things out, you do. Many people do. Those of us in government work have to be pretty careful about the only thing we have access to here in the law library is information that is indeed public. But does that mean we should go digging around? Probably not. But I know other departments, that's when people get fired, is when they use databases that they have access to that aren't public, and they can start digging around and finding things out. And I think it speaks to this, I don't know what, the poorer angels of ourselves or innate curiosity that we have or what, but yeah. So I think that I get frustrated with the court. They have this clunky system. They have these rules of access. And then I think, yeah, but they are really trying to make things just a little less convenient for people who are just idly poking around, and also less convenient for businesses that are trying to scrape data in order to do things like offer their services to someone whose family member has just died, which is also
also
it's not that great.
Right?
Or use it for some other for-profit kind of plan. I think they just don't want it to be too easy to go rummaging around in people's closets.
I think the concerns raised in this article are absolutely, valid. My concern is, I think this is a topic for the organized bar. This is, I think they were calling for this as well. Let's rethink these rules. My fear is that there's overreach, that we erase everything, make nothing available for the sake of privacy, and ignore the legitimate concerns of researchers who want this data in order to provide better services to consumers. Having access to divorce records, and understanding who's even the dirty details, right? Who's getting divorced and why this is, and how often it's happening. And there's social science reasons, there's legal reasons, there's all kinds of reasons why this data might be helpful.
Right.
I don't want my neighbors just digging in the dirt for any of that. So it's a sophisticated, challenging issue. And I think it's worth I don't ever want to say that this information should just be freely available. And I think, and there's some language in this article that made me bristle a little bit, just saying that folks of open access sort of as a blanket statement will say, should be freely available. I don't think that's the case. I think you can anonymize and aggregate data in a way that still makes it valuable, and there can be access points for legitimate researchers.
Yep.
All of that's very sticky and challenging, but that's why it's a topic, I think, for the organized bar. It's something that we can have an open discussion about at the Bar Association. I think it's worth talking about. That's why
it's not only aggregate data, Mike, but people use these trial court documents to get examples of sample pleadings and all of those different pieces. So if you read the news about some like high profile divorce case with a particularly sticky issue, and you're confronting a similar issue, that's kind of your key to unlock some pleadings or other documents that might be helpful to you. And so I do think, but I think divorce cases are really difficult because all that personal information is in there. And criminal law cases can be deeply personal and harmful to victims too. It isn't just the defendants who may have sort of straightened up and are flying right and don't really want people to access that. And that's, expungement serves the purpose of sealing records for a certain number of those folks. But between victims and defendants, the criminal cases really can unveil a lot of pretty personal information. So it's definitely a really a high wire that the court is trying to walk to provide access and yet protect people a little bit.
Hey, Michael's with us.
Hey, he's come in.
I'm going to add him in. Look at that handsome fella. Nice picture.
I know. Look at that formal portrait.
Michael, you're muted. Welcome.
He's trying to find the video button there so we can see him live and in person. Look, there he is. Hi, Michael. Oh.
Okay, it's been one of those mornings already. Yay. Yes, my dogs decided that, no, we're not ready to leave the park yet.
And who can blame them? What a beautiful morning.
Actually, yeah. And then there's this kind of like regular group that we end up hanging out with. So, and there was new dogs introduced today. So it was a tiny bit of mayhem at the beginning, but all in all, it was worked out. It's sort of, it's not, I don't know, it's like a little rolling party as you walk through the. So I've missed so much. What do you guys? Dog bites and man bites dog? Is that
we did? Yeah, we've been talking about where the rubber meets the road in this session. I think we were just chatting about the ALRs and the Amjur proof of facts and how much. I think Michael, we decided we're going to hang on to those for a little while, even though we've got pretty good AI tools. We were just talking. I don't know if you got a chance to take up, Mike, at this article from the Bench and Bar magazine from Michael Boulette and his colleagues, talking about Minnesota court records online and how it exposes a lot of the personal details, especially in divorce cases, arguing for new rules or the rules that have been adopted in other states that may limit our access to some of that stuff. We were just talking about how this information is valuable, but it needs to be treated with respect. Karen was making the point that a lot of this stuff is super personal, and it's not just aggregating the data that is the information that we want, right? We can anonymize and aggregate data, and all of that stuff can be interesting to researchers, but where the rubber meets the road, I think, is if you're handling a sticky personal issue as an attorney, some of those dirty details can be super helpful in your pleading practice even, right? I mean, what is the next step in this sensitive situation? How is another attorney handle that kind of sticky situation. And I think, that's also available when you have these, details available. So even, if it's accessible to professionals who are behaving professionally, and not just the neighbors who want those details, maybe as a matter of policy, that's just too difficult of a needle to thread. I don't know, but again, I think this is something that the organized bar should take up.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, because actually, 20, 30 years ago, forever, this stuff has always been available. The barrier was you had to go to the courthouse and get to it, which
right.
you guys probably
Right, we
chatted
were
about
talking
already.
about that,
Yeah.
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 And so the
What
the
is
other
Damien?
problem,
Our colleague Damien has, not just Damien, but he's the one who introduced me to the term security via available. What is that? What is that phrase? Accessibility, security via accessibility, or something like that. Anybody familiar with that?
no, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Given the amount of time and effort, and you could always count on the clerks to be a little bit of a barrier as well, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's the other problem, though, is you're talking about not a state by state issue, even you're talking a county by county issue,
Right.
and every county is its own fiefdom, and so you've got, and you've got some combination of elected, appointed officials. I mean, there is no overarching. So the real change somehow needs to come from top down, right? But there is no top in these instances. So I agree, it's a big problem. And actually, the truth is, I don't know what the statistics are on how many counties aren't online. I mean, you still have especially more rural counties, you don't necessarily have them having access. Now, maybe at a state level, you can get some basic information, but there again, it depends on the state. So it's a mess, basically.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Michael, because we're quite spoiled here in Minnesota that they've instituted e-filing. And so for occurring cases, all the counties are on, all the judicial districts are available. The Supreme Court, manages this unified trial court system, really well. But you go to other states, to your point, and it is every county, every trial court can kind of do the thing that they want to do. And if you go back historically for these older cases, then you're back at the courthouse. And Mike and I talked a few weeks ago about the judicial branch's records retention policy, which can be super helpful in saving you some time in running around trying to find court records, because it'll tell you these records are kept 20 years, these are kept 50 years, these are kept indefinitely. So it can save you a bit of time.
Yeah, it always amazed me when I was living in Illinois. They did a big Lincoln project, not surprisingly, but someone took the time and energy to go into the courthouses and to go back as far as they could find files. And they discovered a whole layer of documents about Lincoln's practice that sort of dispelled some of the myth. I mean, he was actually a truly a technical lawyer. I mean, he was not just this sort of great, storyteller person. He technically knew the law in a way that was just amazing. I mean, I guess he's been called one of our greatest autodidacts. I think so. They say autodidact.
No, really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of a big Lincoln fan because for a while I lived in Springfield, Illinois. I lived in Illinois long enough to, and then actually part of the territory I covered with my property tax practice kind of trailed his own circuit practice back in the day. So any courthouse you go into would have, oh, here's a bench that he put his boot on or something,
Right.
Some connection to Lincoln. But no, he was, when the Civil War started and it started out so badly, he actually went to the Library of Congress and checked out all these books on warfare and, sort of taught himself things that he needed to know to be able to talk to his generals. And that's what people forget about Lincoln. It was like, he wasn't just, that he was, he was brilliant, but he was also just able to figure out, he was one of the Library of Congress's biggest users, both when he was a congressman, and then when he was when he was president. So yeah. I forget
Michael, I
where the
love this
started.
story
Oh,
of Howard.
That's a great story. Right on point to the theme. You'd have thought that you came in earlier rather than late to this meeting. We're just talking about however credentialed you are, you're still going to want Amdur proof of facts for the dog bite. Okay, yeah, that's
Yep.
That's perfect.
And Lincoln would have done the same thing, right?
I would have done
Yes.
the same. Yeah. They're Lincoln-esque research.
Well, there's a reason that so many books have been written about him. I mean, there's just so many different angles to him as a person. But yeah, no, I think where I was going with that was that was an example of where you had all these records that, in theory, some places would have destroyed, years and years before, but it was in, rural counties in Illinois where, they just kept piling them into, storage places.
Sure,
And
who has time?
So,
yeah,
yeah.
they probably didn't have time to go back and manage those. So you just
Right.
kept them. Yeah.
Right. So
And they
Interesting.
weren't destroyed or-
no, I agree about the Amdur proof of facts for sure. Although, my problem is that as we're going through stuff now is a lot of academic law libraries back in 2008 or 9 started evaluating, because of the budget cuts, because the library is always the first thing that's seen as do we really need, that stuff? And so if it was on Westlaw or Lexis or Bloomberg, then why do we need the print since we can,
Right.
get access to that? So now I have a bit of a conundrum because, could I afford to lose either Westlaw or Lexis because they now supplement effectively the library? I mean, the print materials.
Right.
And so I'm in a bit of a rock and a hard place, as I think other folks are. And it's the same with Bloomberg. Bloomberg's a little easier now that I forgot this is public, people will see this, but they sort of didn't do BNA any favors when they got bought BNA.
Oh, really?
I'm disappointed in the way some of the Bloomberg material has the trajectory it's taken, we'll put it that way. But I think they are beginning to rethink their relationship with law schools. They were, I don't know, Karen, if you stopped by the Bloomberg booth when you were
Yep.
at AALL.
Yeah.
But Jason Wilson has joined them. I don't know if you know Jason, but he used to be, he was with Connor Publishing in Texas. They end up getting bought by Thomson Reuters, and then he joined Bloomberg to help them think about their strategy. I only got to talk to him briefly, but I mean to reach out and connect with him because that actually could be an interesting topic, Mike, is where are these folks going now? Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg, not just from an AI perspective, but just, knowing that people aren't necessarily able to afford the big three now.
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
And it is problematic because, of course, producing physical products is so expensive that I can see this desire to push people more online. And that's fine. It can become problematic for libraries. And to Michael's point, we don't want to just have one publisher.
Right.
A law firm can decide we're a Lexis shop and go that way. But as a library, we want to provide, options for the titles. And when you go online, you're always wondering, is there a day when they're going to take that away or price us out? And
Yep.
that can happen in print, but you at least still have what you previously bought sitting on your shelves that can still be useful to some degree. But when you're in an online environment, when you stop using that service, then it's all gone. So
Yep.
it's a different calculus, I think, for a library than it is for a practicing attorney.
it really is. And like I said, that I have all these volumes, I mean, in excess of 400 treatises that are now 10, 12 years out of date.
Right.
And I don't have them labeled in a way to say, hey, warning. I don't worry about it hugely just because we don't have the traffic, say Karen does with, pro ses or folks who are needing to rely on the material. And, we've got safety rails in place, because people can come talk to the librarians about the material. But yeah, so it's tricky and it's troubling because, I don't want to necessarily be just an online entity. I think there's some of this print I'd love to keep in place, but publishers make it, as Karen said, very difficult because, price increases and you can always count on inflation every year to, 3 to 7% increase. But yeah, it's a racket, no question.
What's your feeling on it? Bloomberg, I think, used to be viewed as sort of a mile wide and an inch deep type of resource. That it's Bloomberg, so it's connected to finance. They had more dockets. It was more about data, less about if you wanted to research deep into the parole evidence rule, you do that on Westlaw. But if you wanted actionable intelligence, you'd use something like Bloomberg Law. I don't know if that's still the. I know, Michael, at the St. Thomas, you're using Bloomberg quite a bit, aren't you?
Well, we do it primarily for dockets, but actually, Bloomberg's strength, in my view, is that they're also drawing from Bloomberg, their financial information.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in terms of transactional work and not litigation,
Right.
Bloomberg is still, it's a great resource. And they've done some really cool things with like the SEC documents. So, I forget, I don't know whether they bought a company or but they have their own ability to you can pick up 2 different 10Ks and you can run a analysis of the 2 documents and then see where the differences are.
Right.
Because in theory, a 10K is a 10K, but it's really not. That's not actually the case.
Yeah.
So it's got, and then also I know that Bloomberg, in fact, that was a little bit of the conversation I had with Jason, is they really aren't interested in the solo small firm people. They're big law.
I can't imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's
there
a
are
whole nother
differences between even the electronic resource, the big resources. I'm not sure where I would place Lexis in the mix even, but at least Bloomberg is out there as a alternative type of resource that's electronic. I don't know if that makes your library diverse. We have Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg. I don't know if that, availability of 3 different electronic resources makes a diverse library.
Well, I'll tell you that actually Bloomberg is probably the most controversial. There's several law schools that have dropped Bloomberg as a tool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bloomberg, I always wondered why they bothered to go in with all that primary law. Because they don't have a very good interface. The search interface is not very intuitive, I don't think. And Lexis and Westlaw had all that material covered. So then they just offered it again. And I thought they should have just gone in more with that finance and corporate kind of material and their treatises and really invested in making those super useful, which I think they did. But then they would sell it to you and charge this high price and say, look, you have all this primary law. And I think, yeah, well, we get that not only in Westlaw and Lexis, but on the free web as well. So
I think
I wonder that. I didn't think they did it very well, and I wondered why they bothered.
All the AI companies are being built have the same problem. It's like, where are we going to get the case law? It's like, well, why do you want it? I mean, I suppose it's baseline, right? I suppose I'm not sure that it is, though. Do you have the primary source material, statutes, regulations, case law? But I just, if you don't have the legislative history, this is my issue with, testing some of these resources, is that it's a pretty good summary of what you have in the database, but there's so much other stuff that, unless you have access to the legislative history or news articles, even, you're only halfway there. So what do you expect out of the AI tool? It's only one little piece to gather the case law. And as you say, Karen, those bases are covered by other resources. I worry about all of these AI companies that are building on top of case law.
Yeah.
Well,
it's always, the older I get, the more I think you can't just choose one thing and go all in and rely on it as a researcher. You always have to take multiple approaches to your question to make sure you're really getting what you need to get.
Yeah, it's that difference between primary and secondary, right? I mean, primary is the law, great, but you need someone to explain what that is and how it works and why you would use it. And that's all buried in the secondary stuff, right? So what they want is not the US code or the USC, they want the USCA or the USCS. That's what they want to or should ingest if they want to be able to properly understand what the statute and reg is about, or even the case law is about. Yeah, I don't know. And then now I'm getting bombarded, as I'm sure Karen is too, with all these Lexis plus AI, become an AI insider. Here's a, demo. Did you go to that one session, Karen, at AALL on Sunday where they did the Lexis AI thing and they rolled out the product?
I did not, but I went to their booth and I said, hey, I have a question, a research question that I'd brought that we had trouble finding. And they said, oh, we won't take your question. We'll show you the question we've chosen.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm unimpressed. And they said, oh, it won't be ready for prime time until we're rolling it out to some firms in September and then academia. And so, yeah, Michael, I get all these things and I just laugh and think, yeah, well, talk to me when you're ready for prime time.
Yeah, it's very, very much the talk was littered with, and this is how it's going to work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Karen, you mentioned that AALL, so did Bab Ambrosi. I think everybody's just holding their breath because there's nothing. Everybody's building right now, so there's no big announcements. There's no.
Yep.
Michael, is that your sense of AALL as well? Is it kind of quiet?
Yeah, it is. And here's some exciting news. Bob is going to be our keynote speaker at the Spring Mall Conference.
No kidding. You got him for the spring.
I did.
Oh man.
He actually would have done the fall, but he was busy on that day. So.
Oh, that'll be fun. Well, we'll have to promote that then also maybe to some other groups outside of Mall, because I think he's a big draw.
Oh yeah. I mean, Bob's just terrific, actually.
Yeah. I think we have a whole Bob fan club in this podcast, right, Mike?
We do.
You guys look to him and
well, the AALL, I think actually too is let's see, we've got new leadership this year, and I don't know what June's theme is for next year. I forget, because that's part of the deal is the president gets to choose sort of like with the ABA, like any of these associations, gets to choose whatever the thing is. It's like AALS, the Association of American Law Schools, their theme for this January's conference is Defending Democracy. And then sure you saw the ABA just appointed a new task force on saving democracy with Judge Ludig and former Defense Secretary or Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson, I think. But they were making the rounds yesterday on the news shows. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think the ABA is, hopefully will put some teeth into it.
I did think that was interesting. Was it Judge Ludig's opening remarks that were floating around on social? I can't remember the name of the judge who gave those defending democracy remarks. I was surprised to see it blatantly political. I was surprised to see an ABA, especially because these bar associations are so afraid of politics, to be speaking out on the insurrection and things like that. So I was surprised to see that at the ABA. Happy to see it, but surprised.
Yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it, Mike? I mean, maybe it's just shaken enough people that they've decided to really take a stand in defense of democracy. I think for years we rode along thinking, there's some kind of fringy elements, but the democracy is sound, and maybe people feel they need to stand up more.
We were talking last week about how another Ambrosi article, Robert Ambrosi article, about how they silenced this, I thought, very milquetoast op-ed from the Center of Innovation from the ABA, which said, hey, we should probably look at amending Rule 5.4. That would have avoided the problems with things like the Do Not Pay app. It was celebrating the Utah Office of Center for the Innovation and Legal Services. 2-minute read was censored because it would stir up so much political heat at the bar association. It's like not. I mean, that's something that we can talk about. What's the big deal? Let's write an op-ed. Somebody will respond in kind. We can have a civic discussion. That's not anything that any lawyer is afraid of, and that's one of the frustrations that I have with bar associations, that they run from those conversations. Just crazy to me. So surprised to see the comments, opening remarks. I'm sorry, I don't remember if it was Judge Ludig or it was floating around on social a little bit about the comments of we need to defend democracy. The attack on the Capitol was terrible, and denying the election. So it was great to see an affirmative statement when typically bar associations seem to run from those kinds of conversations.
They do, and it's like everything else too. It's a yearly process, right? You get a new president every year.
Yeah.
So there's a change in agenda. People just get rolling along, and at the time they're really ready to do something. I mean, sometimes. Well, I think that's partly why some of these things have a vice chair and and chair-elect kind of thing. So at least you have some time to come up to speed. So I don't know. And then it's also going to be sort of putting your finger up in the air and see which way the wind is blowing. But I don't get, this whole, non-lawyer sharing fees thing. I sort of get that, why it's a problem, but not really. And, and the kind of legal services that we're trying to fix are not the ones that's going to take money out of lawyers' pockets, because that's the problem. No lawyer is doing this work now. So there's no ox to be gored. But at any rate, don't get me started, Mike.
No, yeah, we should dedicate a research episodes to Rule 5.4. I think that would be interesting, because there are a lot of unanswered research questions, like what is the market for latent legal? Is there such a thing? Is the latent market for legal services? Is that a thing? How do we investigate that? I think that's a seminar. I think that's a full weekend down here at the Art Center in the we could do investigating strategies for doing that. So there are research questions related to that as well. But
sure. Yep.
I agree with Michael. I'm not sure I understand the concern. The protection of public and is not. We're not helping anyone right now. So,
Yep.
I've had this eyeball up on the screen for a long time. I hope that's not scaring anyone away. We are live on YouTube. I'll switch over to my practical law. And we were talking about practical law as well, Michael, earlier, how practical law, very cool resource, but it doesn't address the dog bite end of things. It's not where the rubber meets the road. Which is another, I think this is a demonstration right here of why Rule 5.4, if it does reveal that there is such a thing as a latent legal market, you might see, practical law that is actually practical for consumers, might reveal the availability of other resources.
Well, the other thing about practical law that I find frustrating is it's so state by state different. It's different in how built up it is. So Minnesota, every time I say, oh, you should use practical law, and I go and look for a Minnesota example, it's like not there. It's
really?
Like you're in New York, you'd be covered great, but
yeah,
Minnesota for some reason just doesn't seem to have the coverage. And actually, it was that way in Missouri too. So maybe it's just the M states. I don't know. Uh,
Well, I think we're right on the
Midwest.
edge of the populous attorneys, right? So we're not Florida, Texas,
Right.
California,
Pennsylvania. Yeah,
Illinois, or New York.
yeah. That's right.
Michael, thanks for joining us. We are at the top of the hour. Let me just ask you quickly, we always ask everyone what was their most favorite legal research question of the week. Karen and I had an opportunity to discuss, and you jumped right in, right on theme, which is impressive, I have
Yeah.
to say.
Well done.
But before we go, we usually chat about what we're looking forward to this next week. Michael, have you got anything coming up we should know about?
Well, next week is the last week before school starts. So
Oh
it's
my
the,
God.
the last phase of getting everything ready, because we
Yeah.
begin orientation for 1Ls on August 21st, followed by our first week of classes the week after. So we were typically 2 weeks ahead of the rest of the university, which I continuously have to remind our IT people.
Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
please don't do the re-imaging thing that you usually do right before school starts, because remember, we start before everybody else starts. But yeah, so no, it'll be nice. There'll be some, I'm looking forward, because this is I think a fun thing. We also have some big, like, staff get together events this week just to get ready for the school year. So it should be a nice week, but you can tell it's just the temperature is different at the law school now.
Sure.
Very cool. Karen, what about you?
I don't have anything in particular, although next Friday, a week from today, is our monthly CLE. And this time it is a review of the cannabis legislation that was passed this past spring, with a particular emphasis on business. I think, like cannabis businesses and what they'll need to know, and the criminal expungement piece. So we have two speakers. They both work for the same cannabis law group, North Star Law Group, but they're going to describe the legislation from these two different points of view. I don't know how they're going to do that in 1 hour, but they seem confident they can get it covered.
Wow.
So that'll be interesting. There's a lot of interest, as you can expect, in all the big legislation that was passed. So in October, we'll also have an overview of the landlord-tenant law changes
Yes.
that occurred as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm interested in both of those things. Both of those projects have been coming in my door. I've been calculating THC. So those are fun projects, but yeah, interested to know. Those are two big changes in the law. I'm excited to. Karen always says, nothing particular, but it's always a very cool. Always a very cool upcoming.
Well, we're just cool all the time, so it's not different. It's
I
just
know.
it's just more cool.
That's right. Nothing particular.
How about you,
It's cool to
Mike?
other
What are you
people.
looking forward to? Yeah.
What have I got? I've got a CLE coming up next week after. I can't remember. I'm doing a little something for Lawya on document automation.
Nice.
So doing that for Clio, which is fun. Reconnect with some of my old colleagues there and talk about document automation, which isn't exactly research, but it is within my wheelhouse. So excited to do that. With that, thank you both for joining us early on a Friday morning. I hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks again for joining us, and you guys are awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike.
Good to see you, Mike.
Good to see you, Karen.
Take
Bye.
care.